please.
Well, I was in Sacramento. Yeah, that we had that was on vacation. It was.
No.
Go back. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open this meeting of the Planning Commission. Call to order. And the roll call, please.
Thank you. Chair Wilson,
Present.
Co-Chair Kurth,
Here.
Commissioner Huber, Commissioner Porter, Commissioner Dew.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to have the invocation led by Commissioner Kurth, and I will be doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Please bow your head as we pray. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to meet tonight. Please bless this meeting so that the decisions that are made are in the best interest of this city.
All right, our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the meeting of February 11th, 2015.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I guess I'll wait for you to call for corrections.
Oh, go ahead. If you've got a question, that's fine.
I'd like to make a correction regarding the commentary I made at the last meeting. That I will follow the direction of the staff, and that's not accurate. Thank you, Chris. That's not accurate, so I wrote it out, and what I indicated was that as making executive decision, it's important that I consider their expertise as when making recommendations, not necessarily directions. I wrote it out.
Perfect. Okay. I'll
Okay,
do that.
thank you.
Chestnut, she can make that correction. Any other corrections?
Yeah, so we'll just bring those minutes to you at the next meeting corrected. That way Lionel can make sure.
Perfect. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and we will move on to agenda item number 1. We just do the approval with corrections, or we want to bring it back?
I would rather bring them back. It looked like a little bit extensive.
Okay. Not a problem. All right. So then we'll go ahead and move to agenda item number 1.
Yes, agenda item number 1 is a public hearing. It's PLN 15-3. It's a conditional use permit to allow for live entertainment in conjunction with a restaurant at 14562 7th Street. Stacy Windler is the applicant. If you recall, this is the restaurant / bar that we thought we were going to have issues with back in September, October. And staff had denied it, recommended denial of it, denied it. It came to the commission on appeal, and the commission was okay with conditioning the project or the business. One of those conditions was no live entertainment unless you return to get a conditional use permit for it. Staff didn't support her requesting that for at least 6 months, which is similar to what we do for hookah lounges. And therefore, it's been 6 months. There have been no reports, no incidents, and no negative incidents at the location. So therefore, this is before you for your approval. We've conditioned it for your approval. Modified a couple of the conditions to make it so that she doesn't advertise for live entertainment. We don't want people going there to see a band. We want people going there for the restaurant and then enjoying a band while they're eating.
Okay. All right. Well, I will go ahead and open up the public comment. I do have a card for Stacy Dayan. High-end.
I've been married, so I'm not.
That's
I'm
right.
Handler high-end now.
Okay.
But this is my first time public speaking, so I'm very, very, very nervous. So, okay, so yes, we have been open. Am I really loud? Okay, so we have been open for 6 months now. We run completely just as a restaurant. In fact, so much so that I think we have a great menu. People have been coming in. I don't know if any of you guys have actually been in, but we get so many people in saying that they love our steaks, our food, our burgers. Like, we've just gotten so many compliments and people saying that they really needed this in the neighborhood. So much so, we were very excited yesterday that actually we were in the Daily Press. I don't know if anyone actually got to see this, but we actually had one of the guys, his name is Marshall Harpove, and he came in and without us even knowing, and he tried our restaurant, and he actually wrote one of the best reviews I've ever heard, and it was awesome. So I actually made copies if you guys want to actually see that, and it's actually from a point of view of, someone established in the community that can give a, what actually our restaurant's all about. Another thing is, as far as like the live entertainment, we're not requiring like, to do live entertainment and do dancing. We have no dance floor whatsoever. The type of entertainment that we're doing, it's not going to be a dance club. It's not going to be any rap music. It's not going to be DJs. It's going to be country bands and rock and roll. And it's going to be you and sitting enjoying your dinner while you're having entertainment. There will be no dancing whatsoever. And as far as that, like the conditions that he put on, I've read them, and it's kind of more like where he's like put in, obviously, like he said, no advertising of the live entertainment. We're totally okay with everything that they've said. We don't even mind putting, like a 1-year renewal on it, where like, say for instance, in 1 year, like we come back and, we just prove yourself, like we did for these 6 months, just prove ourselves that like, we don't have a bad intent or any negative intent on the community whatsoever. In fact, if anything, we're just trying to improve it.
Doing good.
Other than that, is there any questions? And then, do you guys want to pass this out so anyone can like see it, or is it okay?
So, are there any questions for Stacy?
Chairman, I have a question. You've read over all the conditions which the staff made
Correct.
recommendations, and you have a surveillance camera?
We do. We actually have about 10, and we did have some in the front and the back. We have them all over our cash registers, all over the floors. They're monitored for actually, we asked for 7 days. We ended up buying a system that actually does it for at least 30 days. We've actually had to only use it maybe a couple times when someone's like lost their purse or an ID or something, and then we've been able to actually go back and track on that. But as they've said, there's not been one instance where actually a police officer's actually had to come into our establishment. Nothing's ever happened whatsoever for us to actually have the need to even go back. But we have in an instance, someone did lose her wallet and ID, and then we told her, we said, oh, you stuck it in your red bag all the way at the bottom. It looked like you put it, she goes, I know, I found it in my driveway. When she was getting out of her car, she dropped it. So we actually have a really good security system.
Okay, I'm not looking at so much what the owner or what the owner is doing. I'm more concerned about the atmosphere in which participants, when they come to your location,
Oh,
are they behaving?
Oh my gosh, 100%. We actually have, and it was the funniest thing too, because when I first came in, I kind of had that negative, like, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? I live in Marina Del Rey. I've always had places down the hill. I've heard so many bad things. A lot of people were even giving me negative. What are you going to do up there? When I came in, I remember like my first week, I was like, oh my God, there's like the nicest people up here. And like, honestly, like I've actually grown to like and love my clientele. And the customers that come in, I have, a lot of regulars. And they always say, we love coming in here because it's not so dim and dark, and we can hear, we like to talk. And, it's a very easy atmosphere as opposed to some of the other places that they were mentioning.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to item number 1? And I'm going to go ahead and close it and bring it back to the commission. Discussion?
Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion. Find the project categorically exempt under Section 15301 of the state guidelines to implement CEQA. And for the conditional use permit, approve resolution P-15-005 along with all the conditions
For approval?
for approval, along with the attached conditions in the staff report.
Do I have a second? Are we doing a manual vote?
Yes, we have a first by Commissioner Kurth, Co-Chair Kurth, a second by Commissioner Porter, and we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have a unanimous approval for this
Very good.
project.
Congratulations.
We need the money.
All right, I'll go ahead and I will move on to agenda item number 2. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Agenda item number 2 is a conditional use permit with an environmental exemption to allow for the reestablishment and alteration of a non-conforming office use within an R3 residential district. This proposal includes a new medical office, revised hours of operation, and a parking and site redesign. A little history on the site. It was originally converted to a commercial use approximately in 1981 for use as a daycare office or a daycare facility. Most recently in 2001, it was used as a counseling office. It was approved via CUP by the Planning Commission. At that time, municipal code allowed conditional use permits to process conditional uses. At that time, the municipal code allowed the Planning Commission to approve a conditional use permit to allow a commercial use in a residential zone. Since that time, that allowance has been removed from code. However, the site itself is improved with paved parking, landscaping. Additionally, before its use as a commercial use, it was a single-family residential home, it appears to be. So even if it was reverted back to residential use, it would not meet the current R3 high-density multifamily standards. So it is a true non-conforming use. Because of that, it requires a conditional use permit to allow for the reestablishment of the non-conforming use as an office, as well as the alteration to allow for the modified office use from a counseling office to medical office, as well as new hours of operation. The business itself is a family practice medical office. Clients are seen by appointment only. There's no walk-in or urgent care. It operates basically from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. There are limited hours on Fridays till 4 p.m. No weekend hours whatsoever. There is a parking deficiency on site of 2 spaces. Previously, the site did conform to parking standards. It had 13 spaces. However, those spaces did not meet minimum depth requirements. There was not minimum access requirements met. So how it really operated on a day-to-day basis probably was with less than 13 spaces, because staff found that there was no way that there could fit that many cars really on site with the way the site was designed. So with this proposal, the spaces will come back into conformance in terms of size, from access. It will be deficient 2 spaces, however, because of the hours of operation during the day, no weekends, and the limited client base, staff finds that the existing parking as proposed will be sufficient to serve the site. Additionally, if there are any issues in the future, there are appropriate conditions that would allow the zoning administrator to require additional parking spaces in the rear of the site to bring it into full conformance with code if it does become an issue with parking or conformance with that. In addition to those parking improvements, a block wall is being proposed where an existing wood fence is, which would benefit the site and the local community. Trash enclosures will be updated, and then there will be general maintenance in terms of landscaping, painting, things like that. That being said, as conditioned, staff supports the proposal, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you for your report. The petitioner is in agreement with all the conditions in which you've indicated?
Yes, the applicant's representative has indicated they're in agreement with all the conditions of approval.
And out of curiosity, how often is it that there's a transition from R2 to commercial or business? How often does something like that occur?
Fairly often, in terms of the conditional use, and especially situations like this, because our code did allow situations where commercial could be allowed by the commission in limited circumstances in a residential zone. It's not an uncommon request to have this, and if the code was still an allowance of commercial uses in residential, I would assume staff would probably take a similar stance on the support of the item.
Especially where you have the intersection of 2 streets like this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone that wishes, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to item number 2? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and bring that back to the commission. Any discussion? Yeah. And I'll go ahead and second that. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So that has been approved with a first motion by Commissioner Porter, a second by Co-Chair Kurth Wilson, with Chair Wilson, and Commissioner Huber recused.
Larry?
Chairman Wilson, on this next item, I recused myself on this item in the past, so I would request to do so again this time.
All right, item number 3 is a continuance request for a site plan to allow for the construction of two fast food restaurants and a multi-tenant retail building with an environmental exemption for Cody Foods. Need to go ahead and recognize that if anyone wishes to speak to this item. Item number 3.
Hi, I'm Dan Osrin with Cody Foods. Thank you for helping us with the project. I was only going to speak if there was opposition tonight, which appears to not be.
Could I get you to fill out a white card and give it to Tess, please?
Sure.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to item number 3? Then we'll go ahead and I will close the public comment until our April 8th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting. Great, thank you. Go ahead and move to agenda item number 4. This is also a continuance request for a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending to the City Council of the City of Victorville an ordinance relating to the various amendments of Title 16 of the Municipal Code, including but not limited to transitional housing, reasonable accommodations, light auto repair, the definitions section, the land use table, and the prohibition or regulation of certain problematic uses with an environmental exemption. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to item number 4? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment and continue this item to our May 13th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting. All right. In compliance with the Brown Act, it is necessary for the Planning Commission to make available time for members of the public to address the Planning Commission for items of interest that fall within the Planning Commission's subject matter jurisdiction. Please limit the length of your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to the Planning Commission in regards to anything? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close public comments and move on to item number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Yes, we brought this new business item to the Commission to have a discussion and possible determination on the skateboard ramp at 12417 Cobalt Road. If I could start by passing out a 4-page packet. Pictures of on the screen behind you. I don't know if we can get it in front of you, but location and pictures of the skateboard ramp. But so there's been complaints, there's been some code enforcement activity, and then there's been the owner trying to make it legal. So the owner's coming to the city saying, well, how do I get it approved? So on the first page, the definition of a structure. It's a structure, so it meets the definition of a structure, so then you ask, does it need a building permit? And because it's over 120 square feet in size, and also because of the way it's used with the railing on top, kind of like a balcony, the building division said that they would probably require a building permit for that because it's the safety issue of somebody falling off the side or something. So they would want to look at the railing, and then because of the size, it needs a building permit. So on the second page, have the accessory structure section of our code, and this tells you or gives you the list of uses that are considered accessory structures for residential properties. And you have guest houses and commercial caretakers' quarters, and then you have a section with gazebos, workshops, second garages, pool houses, etc. Then you have solar panels and wind-powered generators. Those are the accessory structures that are allowed in residential right now. So skateboard ramp isn't listed on there, and you wouldn't expect it to be probably, but that's one issue that we need to deal with and address. So move on to the third page, and this is the residential district page, and you have the general purpose and intent section, section A, language like will produce an urban environment of stable, desirable character. And then you have numbers 3 and 4. 3 is encourage the continued vitality of existing neighborhoods, and 4 is promote stable neighborhoods which are well designed, safe, and pleasant places to live. So these are some of the language, some of the language that's in our code right now for why we have standards in place or that we place on single-family residential. Not the language on the back of that page isn't that strong, but it does say the zoning district is intended to protect established neighborhoods of single-family dwellings. And then the final page or document, you have the accessory structure requirements, and it has a maximum height on there. That's 15 feet. And then structures that require a building permit are supposed to be 5 feet from the side property lines and the rear property lines. Again, this is talking about accessory structures that are deemed acceptable in that list of accessory structures. So we haven't really deemed that yet. So that's part of the discussion before you tonight. And then on the last page, there's some notes, but they don't really seem to apply in this case about all accessory structures and additions shall incorporate architectural treatments or features of the primary structure. That's because you would in a shed or look for similar roof pitch materials as the main house. So those are the codes and regulations that we kind of have to go by. Again, it's kind of a little bit of a gray area. So we thought that the best, one of the things that we could do is bring it before the commission for discussion. We noticed the surrounding property owners, just the ones that are adjacent to it, and you have 2 of them, it looks like, here tonight. You also received a letter from a neighbor who appears to be right next door, a support letter from him, and we have the owner of the house as well here. With that, I would offer that you ask testimony, and then we can get into discussion or determine.
Well, we'll go ahead and open up the public comment. I've got 2 cards, Robert and Kilpatrick. If you wish to speak.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Robert Kilpatrick. My address is, I was going to say my work address, but home address is 12410 Aspen View Circle. A lot of you know I've been in front of you for a lot of, on a professional level in terms of conditional use permits and tentative maps over the years. This is the first time I've been in front of the Commission on a personal matter. This matter also kind of goes in, I've spoke in front of this commission in relationship to the development code and development code standards and debate on lot sizes, and it's kind of ironic that and one of my big issues was that in lieu of stronger development standards or even smaller or larger lot sizes, that we focus on code enforcement issues. So I find it ironic that I'm here before you this evening on just that, a code enforcement issue that has come up directly in my backyard. I live again on the house that is a catty corner directly adjacent into the rear of the subject property at 12417 Cobalt. Actually, these photos that you see before you on your screen and in the packet and the letters in it are actually views from our backyard. And as you can see, the structure does exceed height for an accessory use. And it's also had some issues where I think one of the photos even shows, unfortunately, a dog standing on it that could jump over into my neighbor's backyard. With me this evening also is Raul Villa. He's a neighbor directly to the north of me. And then in the letter that I submitted to you, we've also had some complaints for the property owner to the north, Raul Mark, on issues. And we've had some code enforcement and police calls on this where we've had excessive noise and light into the late hour evenings. Mainly what the bottom line is this type of use should not be an allowable use in an R1 zone. Though the reason it's gray is because why would you expect someone to build a skateboard ramp that generates nuisances in a residential district? The main issues of the nuisance have been the visual, as you can see. The noise, again, it's not just he's only had a party a few times, so I don't want to say it's all the time, but when it's in use, there is a reverberation that occurs, a very large rumbling that you can hear into the houses even with the soundproofing houses, we know when that ramp is being used, and it does get noisy. And then thirdly, the other nuisance is light. What he's done is in order to light this thing, to use it at night, he's actually put 3 sets of floodlights on the eaves of this 2-story house. And when those floodlights are on, it actually shines into our backyards. And there was one instance where they were on again. I think we woke up at 1 in the morning. Those lights were shining into our backyard, and we had to do a police call. And again, it's just it's very bright. So if it wasn't for the ramp, your typical single-family house, we all have them. We have floodlighting in our backyard, but they're always at that lower level, primarily just to light the backyard. None of us have really had even security lighting. I can't, even in my neighborhood, no one's ever usually put security lighting in a backyard that just floods the neighbors' backyards. So with that, again, we're respectfully requesting that you do make the determination that this is not, and I got to be careful, it's not that it's not an allowable use, because as staff's pointed out, we don't know if it's acceptable use, but what we're saying is that it should be an allowable use. And again, we're requesting that it be removed, and you do not allow him to get a permit for this use. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, I've got a question. You had mentioned some of the neighbors, or maybe even yourself, or some of the people around there had called code enforcement and sheriff's deputies.
Yes.
Do you know about when and how many times that may
We've made about 3 or 4 calls. Again, Raul, my neighbor to the north, has made numerous calls because, again, he's talked to the neighbor about, when parties, and the neighbors let us know when, there's been a party. He's been letting us know, but the problem is, before you know it, beyond 10, 11, 12 o'clock, that party goes on, and so it kind of goes beyond even what that neighbor, it indicated how late that party was going to go. So we've had police calls of that. So I don't want to say, it's been 3 or 4. This started with, the reason it's before you this evening is it started with code enforcement. We filed for a complaint with code enforcement, I think back in June of 2014 is about when it started, the process. And then code enforcement being as busy as they are with all the other issues, so they actually, I think they finally got out there to cite it just 3 or 4 weeks ago, which is why it's before you now, because obviously the citation was to either get it approved or remove it, I'm going to assume, and then that's why we're here this evening. So it is something that we've been looking forward to, the ability to have this come to a fruition. Obviously that's why we're here, is the determination of should this be used in a residential zoning district. It affects our property value. You saw a letter in there from a realtor. Raul, actually, because of all the complaints and health issues, wants to move, and we have some outstanding citizens that are wanting to move because of this use. So it gets back to the code enforcement. We're trying to beautify our communities, and we need to enforce the regulations we have on the books to beautify our community.
Mr. Chairman, ma'am. I want to get an understanding. You're not opposed to recreation in general. For example, if I was to set up to play horseshoes in my backyard, would you be opposed to that?
No, actually, I've been thinking about it also. You have play yards that exceed sometimes. Some of those newer swing sets and what have you that children have. But again, or even a trampoline. Those are kind of temporary. Those are uses that come and go. And again, very rarely you might have a party, but kids usually aren't up at beyond 10 o'clock at night. So it's very rare that those uses are being used in the hours. This is a use that almost attracts it to be used at any time in the evening, as opposed to a temporary. So I'm not opposed to recreation. If I had children, I'd want to maybe have a trampoline also. But that's where there's constraint, where we, in society, we need to be able to tell our children, hey, keep the noise down or something if you're disturbing your neighbors. So unfortunately, this is a little bit beyond your typical residential, recreational uses that you want to see.
I have another question for you. What if I was to show up with, let's say, 10 or 15 of my friends, and we had our horses, and we want to play polo? Would you be opposed to that?
I'm sorry, horses?
Yes.
Well, horses aren't allowed in an R1 zone in our
But I take
in
you
our
would be
district.
opposed to that, would you not?
Yeah. Well, again, it depends on the zoning. That's why we have zoning. That's why we can't have chickens in our backyard either. So there are certain things. So we have zoning to regulate those type of uses. But to answer your question, yes, I'd be opposed to horses in someone's backyard, because that's not why I bought this house, was to have horses.
Okay.
There. Now, if someone would have a party and have a pony ride or a petting zoo, that's a once a year type or once a event. I'm not opposed to that, but leaving a horse in someone's backyard, longer than one day would be a problem.
You're making my point.
Thank you.
One of the things I will say is that the director went over several things, and I wrote some of them down, that he considered to be accessories. And I hadn't found, to this point, a skateboard apparatus to fall in the category of accessory, to the extent where it does not approaches the privacy of another individual. But thank you for your comment.
Yeah. In other words, even we've seen temporary ramps. If someone were to have it out there a one-time event, let's say, again, it was something during a party and you want to set up some of those are made where you can just bring it in. I wouldn't be we're not opposed to him using his backyard for standard residential uses. This is a little bit beyond. And some of the photos he's actually had events there where there's been banners, and it's a little bit beyond a residential use.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chad Collins.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the owner of the skateboard ramp. I guess I'll just start by saying, I'll be honest with you, I'm blown away. I built the ramp for my son. My son's a professional athlete. He's a skateboarder. We just got back from Germany. He travels all over the world. He's 11 years old, and he's like this skateboard prodigy, if you will. Sponsors. He skateboards for a bunch of companies, gets a paycheck. I built this for him. We actually moved out of the Orange County area to somewhere a little bit more isolated, to where you could buy property. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Orange County, but it's very small property. You're not, unless you got a lot of money. So we chose to, pack up our things and move out to the high desert. I have some family that live out here, and we found this house, and one of the things that we initially, we have tons of friends in Orange County and even up here that have skateboard ramps in their backyard. I will say that the majority of them don't have one as big as mine. They're usually a little smaller and stuff, but so maybe, I went a little to excess with it. I was simply trying to build something. I also have a nonprofit organization that I help kids with, I have a bunch of sponsors that are on board with my organization, and I help children, you know, kids. If I go to the skate park and I see a kid that has a screwed up skateboard, I'll help them out, you know, and I'll give them a new board. And, you know, same with shoes. And I utilize a bunch of, you know, different skateboarding sponsors and stuff like that to do this. The event that you see in the photo, the one event that we did have there, it wasn't really an event. It was actually my son's 10th birthday, and what he did was we got banners from all of his sponsors. They donated tons of product, and he invited all of his friends out for his 10th birthday. He hosted, little kid hosted, a best trick contest on his ramp. It was awesome. You know, he was, you know, we opened up you could see the second story window. He had all of his friends down on the ramp. He was throwing out free product to them, like free helmets, free shoe gift certificates. Like, it was a great day. And so as far as events, we don't have events there. My son uses this to, I guess, train or progress with his skateboarding. He's a competitive skateboarder. Like I said, he travels the world competing in hopes that one day he'll make it to the X Games. You know, this is this kid's dream. And so he utilizes this to train on and, you know, to perfect his tricks and stuff. And that's the initial reason why I built it. Since we've moved in, we've became friends. Of course, it would happen with millions of skateboarders that drive by or skate by that are like, oh my God, you got a ramp in your backyard. Can we skate that? So as you could see, the kids that are on the ramp, I mean, I've opened my doors to skateboarders because unfortunately there is nothing in the city for skateboarders, you know, to skate on. There's streets. Some skateboarders don't skate on streets. And so they see it, and I know when I was a kid and I used to skate, I would have drove by our house and said the same thing. Oh my God, can I please skate that? So as far as just kind of shedding some light on the use of the skate ramp, that's its use. It's for my son. In the beginning, when I first started building this, you know, I sunk well over $5,000, $7,000 into this ramp. Just the top sheeting alone is, each sheet that you see on the top is $200. That's 100% resin that they use this sheeting. It's called Skate Light. They use it for X Games. It's 100% weatherproof. I paid all this out of my own pocket, knowing that my backdoor neighbor, Raul, and my other neighbors were fully aware of what I was doing, and they were okay with it. And the only neighbor that I really had come to me with any kind of problems was my direct backyard neighbor, which wasn't the gentleman that just spoke, but he lives next to him. So he's directly behind it. He never posed any kind of problem with it in the beginning for the first year and a half. We had constructively came together. We made, you know, neighbor-to-neighbor agreements. We had time restrictions. You know, you can use it during the day up until 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, it was to be shut down. On the weekends, you can use it until, I don't even remember. I want to say it was around nightfall. You know, we never really used this ramp past nightfall because we never had lights. Those lights that are up, unfortunately, the gentleman that just spoke, that's not, the use wasn't for the ramp. I never had any intentions of using this ramp at night. The use was for, I had a friend of mine that's an electrician that came out. He put lights, because we have like a U-shaped backyard, side yard, backyard, side yard. This side has a jacuzzi and a pool. It also has this land over here that we have a bonfire pit in. And if, like, the lights go on this side and they shine all this area over here by the pool, they shine, there's two of them that shine down on this side, and then there's another two that shine down the other side yard. That's all they were for. And that's all I've ever tried to use them for. I had no plans to turn my backyard into a skate park, by all means. I know he's mentioned that, and he's been very worried about that. Never was in my means at all. Have we had some parties there? Yes. There were, we had our wedding reception there. The skate ramp was not used. We had my son's 10th birthday party there. The skate ramp was used, but the party didn't even go until it shut down at, like nightfall. It didn't go that long. What I'm trying to, I also have two letters one from my across the street neighbor, that got a letter from you guys to appear, or if they wanted to. So they wrote a letter, and then I also have one from the directly to the side neighbor. And it seems to me like the only person really that's complaining is, it seems to me like the gentleman that just approached this podium thing. His whole concern sounds like he works with the city or something to do with coding, and he's really, concerned about the zoning and coding and all this stuff in the particulars. When I first built this ramp, I called the city. I spoke to someone down in the building and planning commission. I don't know how important they were, but I asked them, what do I need to build a skateboard ramp in my backyard? And they said, and I asked them, do I need a permit? They said, no, you don't need anything as long as it's not attached to your house. And I said, okay, that's fine. I made sure, that's why in one of those photos you could see, I put the whole thing up on cinder blocks. That thing can come down in a day. I could pull that whole thing down. And I did it like that because I talked to the city first. And so, with that said, it doesn't sound like he really has a problem with it. The only person that has ever came to me and complained about it is Raul, which is my backyard neighbor, the directly backyard, which we came up with these hours of operation for the skate ramp. And there were some incidences that happened just recently where I thought, in the past year of living next or in back of this neighbor, it seems to me like he's been monitoring my whole life. I have to approve everything with this gentleman. My wedding reception, when I came to him and said, hey, I just want to let you know, because of course I'm going to let him know because he's the only guy that calls me. He's not just reporting my ramp. I have a soundproof room in my house that he's claiming that he can hear my band playing, which we practice in one of my rooms of the house. He's reporting that he can hear my band playing, and that was an issue. He told me that, when I told him about my wedding reception, he about lost it. Oh, Chad, oh my God, what now? What now? And it's like, man, I moved up here to get kind of in my own little area and get some property so we can, have a good life. I've got 3 children. We're not having major ragers. We're not raging all the time. We've had a couple parties. I've toned it down. We had one party that got a little out of hand, and they were skating at night, and one of the skateboards went over into his yard. Guy went over to go get it. Raul came out and had words with him. And so after that happened, I promised him I would never do this again. I swear, I'm not going to have any parties like this. It got carried away. So I guess, my issue is the fact that I feel like I'm just being monitored by this one neighbor. And it's to the point to where I felt like I had a dad, like I had to call him, hey, excuse me, Dad, can I, throw a junction, this weekend? And I'm not trying to be rude, but that's how it felt. My wife's sick of it. My son's sick of it. He can't even skate on that ramp alone without him coming out shooting videos of him, like he's going to turn it into the cops. Like, to me, it's a skateboard ramp. If we have a problem, talk to me. I'm not gonna pay. I don't feel like it would be fair for me to have to pay for a skateboard ramp. I will fix it to where we can, make it feasible to where I'm not bugging the neighbors. But there's no way I'm going to pay extra money just to have a skateboard ramp. People don't pay for playground equipment, where they have 2-story with slides and stuff. And there's no way that I should have to. My son enjoys playing on his skateboard ramp. If it needs to be, manipulated to where it needs to be smaller or whatever, I'm more than willing. I even talked to the city. I don't see the gentleman up here, but I talked to him and I said, hey, what are the chances that I could just say, screw the wood ramp, I'll get rid of it, I'll sell it or whatever, and we won't even skate on it until I sell it, or we won't even skate on it, period. And then I'll take the money along with some of my son's money, and we'll put a concrete in the ground little skate thing for him, and it'll be quiet. It won't have this. It's because it's wood. Because when you skate on wood, it goes, and if you see the back, it's set up to where it's almost like an echo. You're going to get an echo off the back of that.
Yeah, well,
I'm willing to fix it, and that's why I'm here. I'm willing to fix the problem. I'm not trying to fight with my neighbor. By all
appreciate that.
means.
And because the hard thing for us is because there's nothing that defines it in the code that we're having this discussion this evening.
Right.
I'm glad to hear that you're willing to at least to try to make some adjustments, if possible, to appease or make peace. That's a good thing.
Definitely.
I can tell you that one of the concerns that I have in just looking at the picture is the height. That is a concern. Based upon just, you talk about like fees and paying things, if somebody puts up a shed over 100 square feet, there are building guidelines that have to go with that shed. And yes, there are fees involved and things like that. So it's not unprecedented to say that as you have accessory uses, that there could be some fees involved, depending on what the use is. So I get that, you put in a pool, they're going to get up, there's fees that go along with putting in a pool, things along those lines. Were there any questions for Chad?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. It's my impression that you are willing to come up with an alternative.
Definitely. I mean, I have letters here from my neighbors that they're all for what I'm doing. They don't even see the kids coming to my house as a problem. They think that it's awesome that I'm letting kids come in, and skate the ramp, because there's a bunch of kids that skateboard in the city of Victorville that I see that come by my house and they're like, oh my God. And I let them, that's just me,
Okay.
I think that they should have that.
Okay. You do recognize the fact that something considered in the realm of normal by most individuals is something that's always tolerated. There are times when someone can throw a football into someone else's backyard, or as long as it doesn't break a window and that sort of thing. So I understand the fact that you would like to support your son in skateboarding. I think it's good for a kid to do that. I think the challenge is, and I won't call it a problem, I call it a challenge. It's always a challenge when it involves other people. You recognize that.
Of course.
So I recognize that you probably live in a good community, and in spite of the fact of people saying one thing and saying they support it, they have no problem. This is how I feel towards some investigations. Unless somebody is placed under oath or cross-examined, it's what they stated, but it's not necessarily comes out to be fact a lot of times. So when someone says something to me, I accept the fact, I acknowledge the fact they said something to me, but that doesn't mean I have to go further than that. So I think you should present those two letters that you have, or 3, however many you have. And I myself would like to ask some questions of the staff pertaining to this issue, and we'll go for there. But I can see the point where it can be construed as intrusive to other neighbors when it does not fit the category of accessory structures.
Right.
It does not fit that definition.
I think that, one of my neighbors, I was just reading their letters before when I got them. And, one of the letters, and he makes a valid point. He says, the noise level produced from skating is minimal compared to loud music or a barking dog. During the day, I'm allowed to have loud music on, right? Unless somebody comes by with a decibel meter and is like, beep, 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 beep. Too loud, people have loud music on. People have parties and stuff. I think that needs to be kind of accounted for, too, that I could just be some crazy neighbor that sits there and likes to listen to loud music every day. You know what I mean? I'm not. I don't. But I have another side to me. My side. And I'm sure we're not going to get out the decibel meters and measure loud music versus a skateboard ramp. But, I'm just trying to say, I want to work it out with the guy, but I also want my son to be able to enjoy his home, because that's what it is. This is his home, and in his home, he should be allowed to have a skateboard ramp in his backyard. Maybe not the monstrosity that I've built for him, but something that he can utilize.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Yes, I did. You're 100% right about that. And right. And I didn't think about that when we first seen the house. I thought of two things. It looks like one of the things that I'm sure you guys are aware of is people kind of look at Victorville like, oh, why are you going to move way out there? And one of the things was, we found a nice neighborhood, and we know that there's a lot of bad parts of Victorville, that there's some spots where I wouldn't want to live and raise a family. But what we found was a nice neighborhood with neighbors that they could hang out with, the kids, and a decent size lot of land, And it didn't even, I guess I just didn't take it. I've never been a homeowner before, never had this issue. I'm young, and I said, hey, I'm going to build a skate ramp, not thinking that anybody was going to have a problem with it. Because in my eyes, exactly like this gentleman wrote in the letter, that was my thought. It's during the day. We're not going to use it at night. So who cares?
I have another question for you. Lost my train of thought.
How long has it been up?
It's been up for approximately, we bought the house December 2nd, about 2013, I want to say. About 2 years. We lived there about 2.5 years, going on 2.5 years. It wasn't up right away. It was up probably, I want to say, about 6 months after we moved in. What's that?
Year and a half, 2 years, roughly?
Yeah, it's been about 1.5 years, 2 years. Yeah. And just that brings to mind, again, the simple fact that when we first built it, it's been up for about 2 years now. When we first built it, we had no problems. There was only one person that had a problem with it, and that wasn't when we first had it. Everything was fine. for a good year and a half. It wasn't till I believe he came over, or he didn't come over. He told my daughter that her and her friends couldn't sit on the ramp because she was having a little birthday party with her friends. He told her that she couldn't sit on the ramp. I thought that was out of line. You got a problem, you come and talk to me. You know, you don't tell my daughter and her friends that they can't be on their own house ramp. That was one incident. And then the second incident was when it was in the middle of the day. I had about as many people as you've seen in that photo over there skateboarding on it. And he came out and said, he didn't call me and say anything like, you know, hey, I don't want you skating on the ramp or anything. He went to my company and my guest and said, there's way too many of you guys on this ramp. Going to tell me how many people I can have. That's the monitoring that I'm talking about. Like, I feel like he's monitoring my whole life. Like, he's obviously aggravated.
Well, what I have found in the past is usually these things start off small, but they build up over time, and that's generally. I mean, I've had the experience of inconsiderate neighbors. I'm not saying this is a situation here,
Right.
but I've had that situation where you have a party and it goes until 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay, but then you do it the next weekend, and the next weekend, and the next weekend, and after 3 or 4 times, it becomes a nuisance, and it's because you can't enjoy it. Or I can't even enjoy. You can't enjoy your backyard or your house without dealing with the inconvenience of another neighbor. Again, I'm not saying this situation.
Right.
I have one more
I
question.
understand.
Okay. Paula?
Do you remember the name of that individual that gave you permission to do this, that works for the city?
I've been asked that so
Well,
many times.
I'd
don't.
recommend to you that you never, ever get permission from somebody you can't identify.
And you know what? I mean, it was so innocently played, honestly. It's just dad trying to hook his son up with a ramp. That's it. And I tried to go about it the right way. And the biggest question that I had was, do I need a permit? They said no. So I wouldn't have spent, well over $5,000 on this ramp. I don't know anybody that would
Right.
if they didn't think that it was going to be okay. I thought I was, I went full bore, nosedived right into it and said, I'm going to dump some money into this ramp for my son. The city was, basically said, as long as it's not attached to the house, I'm good. So that's what I did. And and I do respect your question, and I do completely understand that. But just really innocently played,
Okay. Any other questions?
No, there's nothing underneath that. That is a concrete patio that stops about maybe 2 to 3 feet from where you see those cinder blocks that the ramp is resting on. It stops 2 to 3 feet under the ramp.
just got elected that is really, really adamant about having a skateboard park.
Right.
And,
I was here at that meeting.
okay, so, maybe you should talk with him some more, get one faster. Excessive lighting is a problem. We don't allow floodlights so the neighbors can see that. excessive noise, that's all into consideration. So the main problem I have is the size of the, and I realize if your son is trying to become a professional, the larger the ramp, the better off it is. You know, you probably like to have it skid all the way around the house. But I have somewhat of a problem with that. I think that it has to be maybe a little bit lower, or a little bit narrow, or something, in my opinion. I mean, I commend you for doing it for your son. I really do. It's just that we also have to kind of please the neighbors. Since we don't have a code, try to figure out what we can do to please everybody. That's why we're here.
And I agree.
That's why we're here.
I agree. By all means, I didn't want it to get to this level. I tried my hardest, and, you know, I guess...
Could the ramp be made smaller?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I think that in my head, I thought, go to that extent to do that, I might as well put it on Craigslist. I actually, to tell you the truth, I've already put the ramp on Craigslist. And I've gotten a couple bids on it already. 'Cause my idea was, I know how I could make everybody happy. Ditch the wood and just dig down with the help of the city trying to help me figure out how I can get a permit or something, so my son, if we dig out like a pool style area, then we can put concrete in there. And that's quiet. You roll on concrete and it's just, you roll on wood and you're hearing all these, excuse me, but.
Wheels don't make a lot of noise on a skateboard, on the wood?
On the wood they do. On the wood they do.
On the wood they do?
The skateboard themselves don't make noise. When you hear a skateboard roll, it's just, but because it's on wood, you see the wood, especially in the heat, the weather conditions, it expands and it, and contracts. And so what you're left with is gaps in between the surface. So when the skateboard wheels hit that, you hear the so when you're going fast on it, you're hearing and I get it. It could be annoying if you're sitting there trying to go to sleep, and it is really that loud. I mean, I live in the house that it sits in, and it's not that loud to me, but I'm only me. I can't judge anybody else's annoyance level, So.
Well, it seems to me there should be some kind of compromise here.
Definitely.
And that's, I guess, what we're here for. I would hate to say, no, we don't want it. I wouldn't do that. But a compromise some way.
And Larry and the rest of the commission, we think of it in terms of the entire city, though. We're not trying to make a deal with Chad.
Right.
We're trying to make it what works in every residential zone, which is what we're talking about, the code. So I think your comments are exactly right. This isn't appropriate. This scale and size ramp is not appropriate in single-family residential. So I think that's what I'm hearing. It seems to be the consensus.
That's what I haven't spoke yet, but I'll speak up. I do agree with that. And Mr. Collins, I just want you to know that I appreciate everything you've said. You seem to be real open and real honest with us, and just laying the cards out because it's a situation in a small neighborhood, and I really appreciate that, and I believe everything you're saying. And as far as your sport and the activities, my background is I spent 6 years on the Vans Warped Tour. I can appreciate those pro skaters, good guys, and I know what your son's trying to do. I know the cost to build the half pipes. I know what you guys are doing. I do appreciate that. The only problem I find is that, unfortunately, it's done on a tiny little 7,200 square foot lot. I live on a tiny lot like this, just like the neighbors behind you do.
Right.
And I got to put myself in their shoes. And I look at the scale of it. I don't see it as a toy. I see as a tool for your son to become a professional. I hope he does. I see this as a tool, not a toy. It's not a little trampoline. It's not a kid's swing set. It seems like, according to the neighbors, it looks like it's lit up. I would if I had this big of a thing. I definitely would, and I'd have parties too. But I think it should be Mountain View Acres, outlying areas of Victorville, and a larger lot. Maybe you've got a friend's place that you can put it there and then go practice skating. A lot of places in Hesperia, Apple Valley, a lot of places would be really well suited for this and supported. And I just, if my neighbor put something up that, and I appreciate that the ramp and the sport, but if they put that thing up, it's big, it's ugly, it seems unreasonable to me in comparison to everything else that's around there. Matter of fact, this commission has spent a lot of time just upping the design standards on the single-family residential lots for new construction in Victorville, and a lot of the debate was how to make the back side of the house look more appealing, because we do see those. It's not just the front that needs to look nice, you know. And it's not that you're wrong. I just think it's not appropriate. And thinking like Mr. Borchert said, citywide. If this is acceptable here, I'm looking at the aerial. It's acceptable here and here and here and here. And you know, honestly, if nobody would have come out and even said anything, we probably wouldn't be here. And if we were here trying to figure out how to do this, and nobody complained, hey, nobody complained.
Right.
Let's go a different way. But we do have two individuals that claim that their property values or their lifestyle is being affected, and I really have to, unfortunately, take that into consideration very heavily. So I can't. I'll be straight up. I can't support having this on that lot. Now, whether you remove it and build a bowl, and that's up to the city and everything else, that's you. You know, I can't even suggest that. But what sits there today and the way it is, I'm going to have to lean against it.
So, with that said, I mean, going back to what this gentleman said over here is, what size, I mean, since there are no, I don't even know the proper word for it, but stipulations on a ramp in a backyard, since there are no, you know, whatever, what size would be considerable?
I think there would have to be some study on that. Since we want to do this citywide, make a code of some sort.
Well, it starts with a minimum of 120 square feet. So if it's 120 square feet structure, it needs a building permit, technically by the building code.
Okay.
We have also spent the last 3 years trying to beautify our city. And, you know, no offense to you, but this does not enhance your neighborhood.
Try to make it look good.
And it looks dangerous to me. I would think that there is a certain dangerous element to it that I wouldn't want to pay your insurance for those kids that come over and do the skating. I really wouldn't.
Well, I mean, just to throw all the cards out there, we've had a 15-year-old kid come over and break his leg on the ramp, and unfortunately, this day and age, I think that parents are a little bit more, they understand, you know. I mean, this isn't the old school to where, you know, people are just sue happy. I mean, I highly doubt that they're going to get a lawsuit out of me for a 15-year-old using his own brain to skateboard on a ramp that size. If he didn't know how to do it, he probably shouldn't have stepped on it.
Well, that's, you're taking a really large risk, I have to tell you.
I mean, I guess I am, but I mean...
Well, I think the city manager kind of mentioned at the last meeting, too, where if the city were to do a skate park, that there isn't a liability for them, because when you step onto, like he's saying, when you step into that skateboard park, if you get hurt, you knew you could get hurt. So
Well, then why do I have to have workers' compensation on my own house, huh?
I don't know.
I kind of got a question to kind of address something that you had said in regards to possibly putting in a bowl type of situation. If he were to go something along those lines, would that possibly then, would that fall underneath a pool?
This sounds like what happened 2 years ago when he said, hey, I want to build a ramp. Is there a problem with that? No, go right ahead. But he didn't show us a diagram of how tall it was or how wide it was or how much of the backyard it took up. Yeah, go right ahead.
It was a
so
phone
I would
call.
hate to do that.
Okay.
But I don't see what the issue is. I mean, yeah, there could be permits. It's not a pool. He could drain his pool and skateboard in his pool right now. You know, we can certainly look into it. I can certainly ask around, but I would hate to give an
Okay, understandable.
Yeah,
answer
for
right
me,
now
it's
without-
not what are we getting into the construction designs. It's whatever you want to do. Don't make it affect the neighbors.
Totally.
Noise, code enforcement, light, you know, all those things that I live in a house exactly the same size as you and your neighbors. So I have barking dogs, I have lights and things like that. But is it out of the norm? You know, I think that's what we're kind of getting at here, mostly.
Right.
Not the construction
Sure.
details of what you will do, because that's really up to them.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to comment regarding Commissioner Hubert's comment as it relates to the study. The petitioner mentioned something equate to a swimming pool, but nevertheless, something of that magnitude requires a study from engineering, architect, the whole 9 yards. And as the director indicated, decision regarding this magnitude will affect the entire city of Victorville. And, you know, Commissioner Porter gave a suggestion regarding land use, 5 acres, 3 acres, whatever the case may be. So this is not a delicate matter that you can expect the commission to snap their fingers, wave a wand, and make a decision, because it does require, as the commissioner indicated, study. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So, as far as just walking away from here, where are we at with the ramp? What am I
Well,
doing?
right now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close the public comment and then bring it back to the commission for some discussion, if we have any questions with staff, and then see where we're going to proceed.
Very good. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this item before I go ahead and close public comment? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Bring it back to commission.
I would like to see staff do some studying and see what size skateboard ramp would be feasible
Or-
for us.
Are there any other
7,200
cities that may
square
have it
foot.
on their code that could possibly give us a guideline? Did we?
I don't want to sit here and say tear down your park, your skateboard park. You can't have it no more. I think he's can some type of a park that would please his neighbors. That's what I'm concerned. How are we going to have the neighbors not complaining? Lights is a problem, noise is a problem, and size, looks. That's my concerns.
I share those concerns. Yeah. Or any direction we need to go, or just
Well-
decide and then bring it back?
Isn't it sort of an attractive nuisance right now? I would think that something has to be done about it right away. I mean, I don't think we can wait to, he said he could take it down in a day. That's what he said. Well, you might sell it, though, in a day, so you might be all right.
I agree. We do have complaints. We do have code enforcement case on it. We do need to do an activity. We can put it on hold. I don't know if he'd be willing not to use it, like he said, where it doesn't impact the neighbors. I don't know whether the neighbors. I don't know how long a study would take. A couple weeks. It would be the April 8th. Before we could come back to you. I don't know if that's too long. Again, I think the overall determination, I thought we were headed towards this isn't appropriate for single-family residential on small lots like this. And if that's the case, then he needs to take it down, and he needs to change it to something that doesn't need a building permit, that we wouldn't monitor, that same as a trampoline, or it wouldn't affect privacy, it wouldn't affect lighting, it wouldn't be a nuisance to the neighbors. Let it go. I wish we had a place for a skateboard park where he could take the whole ramp and move it to the city.
Basically, his compliance would be less than 120 square feet.
Correct. Well, it doesn't require building permit, and therefore we don't regulate. We regulate lot coverage, we regulate height, size, use type things. And that's what I'm saying. That if you think in the list of accessory structures that skateboard ramp is acceptable, then we need to look at regulations. If you don't think that skateboard ramp is acceptable, then make sure that that's clear that this size and scale of a ramp isn't acceptable. And make regulations that say you can have this size ramp, that, a little hard to do. We can certainly do it. I mean, there are different things he can do. He can have concrete in the middle, and then he can do a quarter pipe over here and a quarter pipe over there, and have less than 120 square feet there and a less than 120 square feet there. Doesn't require a building permit. Doesn't necessarily mean it won't be a nuisance to the neighbors, depending on how he uses it or when they use it. So those are the type
That would
of
be a
issues that
different
we're
situation. That would be an if in the future. Today, we're
Exactly.
being asked, what do we do right now in
Exactly.
this current situation?
And that's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please. We have a public hearing.
At 120 square feet, if I stay within those guidelines, bring this to regulation, so my son can enjoy it, I would hate to just say, in the meantime, I could get busy on it. Now, I don't disagree with you guys. I mean, it probably is ugly to some people. Look. And there's, I'm not the only one living in the neighborhood. Probably different. But like I said when I first came in, I'm willing to figure this. I mean, what's the height restriction? What is that? So I know. So then I could say, okay, let's bring my son's ramp down to, I thought you said 15 feet, but that seems really high because that is only 9 feet right there. So,
Well, again, that's intended for a gazebo, a second garage, a guest quarter. That's what that 15-foot is in reference to. It's not intended to reference a skateboard ramp because a skateboard ramp hasn't been shown to be an accessory structure.
what if I said, for the time being, I can take the larger sides down to how big the smaller sides are, and then make it.
I guess that's where we're looking for detraction and determination from the commission, because if it doesn't require a permit, we can't require you to get a permit. If it meets a permit requirement, then we can. If it's going to be a nuisance, regardless of what size it is, that's going to be the neighbor thing, So that's why we brought this before you, because it's one of those issues.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
mean, in my head, the nuisance thing can happen regardless if there's a skateboard.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean-
we have nuisances for a lot of different reasons in the
Right.
city.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mr.
But
Chairman, I apologize, Chris. Based upon what the director has said regarding R2, and I'm looking at, again, accessory structure, I'm prepared to make a decision not to have the structure because I have to consider studies, I have to consider the city of Victorville, other things. So I wouldn't be in favor of at this particular time frame because it doesn't fit this defined definition of
I'll go
accessory
ahead and
structure.
close this public hearing if there's any more comments, and then we can bring it back. Go, Patrick.
Yes, I'll make this very brief. I think if it was the entire structure was below the fence, I think we'd be okay. In other words, the visual portion is what we can see, and he's absolutely right. If you were to, it's like a swimming pool, and the problem is what's happening is the entire structure, including the railing below the fence, is because again, it's becoming a situation where we've got people are standing on it. It's like I know people can look out their bedroom windows and look in your backyard, but this is just so obtrusive.
Right.
So I think the compromise, when we talk about a compromise that we're having is, if he were to reconstruct the structure,
Even if they
entirely-
stood on it and could still look
well,
over
but I mean the
your
railing. But I'm
fence.
just saying, but I'm just saying the railing so you can't see it. Yeah, I think standing on a head might look over. No different than a kid jumping on a trampoline. I mean, I'm saying.
Well,
it's-
no, if the structure's below the fence and it's 6 feet high and somebody stands on it, they're going to be 5 feet over your
Oh,
fence.
but I'm
line.
taking railing and all. If he's got railing, then what's going to happen is his
Oh,
landing.
railing and all. Okay, gotcha.
Everything. If everything were below the fence, then we would. Then,
That's- yeah, okay.
Then, like you said, if you were to build a pool or something, the noise then, because the fence also becomes a noise attenuation feature. You know what I'm saying? The reason we're hearing it is because there is nothing stopping the noise. And I don't even want to get into trees or anything to hide it. I think it needs to be below the fence. So he's already mentioned that he'd be willing to rebuild, use the sale of the ramp and rebuild something, but then come to the permit. So if staff is looking for, if the commission or staff is looking for direction, that could be that simple too. Is something that large, if it's below the fence, that wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you. Go ahead and I'll close public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Commissioner Dew. I think that I think it's inappropriate in a R1 area, and I would be in favor of abating it, but giving him a sufficient time to do so by either selling it or dismantling it. Oh.
But we still haven't determined what we're going to do with the skateboard ramp for anybody else. What if he wants to put one?
I'm saying that I think that this should be abated. If he has any other, if he gets below the 120 feet, that's fine. That's up to him. But as long as he doesn't cause a public nuisance.
So it's not an accessory structure.
It's not an accessory structure, in my opinion. It's something that should be, if it was a roller skating rink that, and you know how noisy they are, would we allow that? Where do we stop? And our lots are really small in comparison to the outlying areas, and we've got plenty of areas where he could. My opinion.
Vote on this, or is it
Direction.
direction?
Yes, a vote would be good for direction, to give us
Vote.
direction or determination, either one.
Well, then I will move that we have him abate the ramp and give him 3 months to do so. I don't believe it's an accessory structure, period.
Second.
But then, does he have some direction what he can do with that?
When I say abate, he's got to remove it.
Remove that, and then is he going to be able to come back with something smaller?
Well, if it's less than 120 feet, he doesn't have to come back.
120 square feet. Can staff work if he has questions in regards to maybe some?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
So, he'll work with you.
So we have a first by Commissioner Porter and a second by Dew to have the skate ramp abated. Is there a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
This will give me 3 months to remove the ramp. You can put something smaller and less than 120 square feet. Looking at, if you have questions, staff is definitely willing to work with you to help you out and give you some guidance and guidelines. And if you give him 3 months for that. Or building, yeah. Correct. Correct. Right? Great. Thank you.
Here.
All right, item number 6, non-conforming sites.
Yes, as I mentioned in the pre-workshop, we provided some more discussion. We discussed this a little bit last month, I believe, or I think it was December maybe. Yeah, December. And the issue with sites that are non-conforming and don't meet the current codes, regulations, either as the site or the uses on them. We looked at other cities and found that Victorville is pretty stringent. We do have pretty good codes in comparison with other cities. We provided information. We'd like to, if we would need more time just to review this and come back with some more comments or more review, we can do that as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll go ahead and open up public hearing for item number 6. If anyone wishes to discuss item number 6. I'll close public comments.
Yes. I do think that the non-conforming sites and uses are so varied that, and each one, you might have one that isn't really exactly, it might be a non-conforming site that, like we had tonight, I think item 2. I thought that was very appropriate because it was with right next to multifamily residential, and it's a non-intrusive type of business. And when you take these uses one at a time, you can analyze them and how they affect the neighborhood and for health, safety, and welfare, and you can make conditions on them that you could even make conditions that they'd have certain time limits to do certain things. And I think that that would be a really good way to do that, because some of them are, you know, they're old and they're decrepit, and we're not going to let them stay that way. But some of them have been, you know, kept up, and as far as the sites are concerned, and as far as the uses, that's a way that we can buy some of the things that we think are intrusive in our city. Tattoo parlors, too many cash places, too many, you know.
Right.
So that's the way I feel.
Have some direction?
I think this was, for me, I spent a lot of time trying to study this item, you know, because as usual, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm thinking of older areas of Victorville, I'm thinking of buildings, you know, non-conforming uses, really old buildings, the parking lot's shot, the useful life is almost done, you know, when it's the non-conforming building, you know, and then I think, well, how much longer until somebody buys that property in this cycle or the next cycle, and or it burns down, or they demo it and rebuild. Building's made it this far, and there's probably a non-conforming use possibly in that building as well. Is it about at the end of its lifespan, or do we just all of a sudden jump to it and say, start throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars at this little building that's worth $80,000? You know,
That's true.
And then you're like, well, then I guess that just forces them to bulldoze it. Is that fair? You know. So these are the things I'm going through with my mind. I know exactly where you guys with staff are coming from. It's hard for me to understand the code because there's so much on this one about all the possibilities, variables, and details. Then I put it into my own experiences working in commercial real estate, which my mind goes to that as well. It has to. And I think, okay, I've had experiences with non-conforming uses that missed it by 90 days, and now we've got a big problem with a CUP, even though the business was fine there for so many years and didn't have a problem, and the neighborhood was fine with it. I wrote down a lot of stuff and some notes, and I don't even, you know, if we're not voting on this tonight, I don't want to go waste time going through this if there's going to be more study. Okay, what I was looking at today, and this just was one thought on the non-conforming uses. I wrote, what about non-conforming uses after the 90-day allowance that are specific to the building and the site and are actually a good fit with the neighborhood? Because this proposal is showing that, you know, you got 90-day window, and then it's maybe not, maybe you can get a conditional use permit, maybe interim. I'll give an example. Auto tire shop, technically no longer allowed according to the land use table for this zoning, but it is and has been a perfect fit in the existing tire shop building. The tire shop tenant moves out. By the time the property goes to market, finds a replacement tire shop tenant, negotiates the lease, and finally applies for a business license with the city, it of course would be well over 90 days. In some cases, this tenant would be told by the city that they would not be able to get a business license because the use is not allowed in that zoning. Sometimes an interim use permit could be applied for. The city would collect $450 and attach conditions of approval, which may include financially substantial property improvements. Then I wrote, is this fair if no physical changes are being made to the property? Should the reestablishment window be longer? Should business uses be looked at based on the suitability of the property in the neighborhood, or strictly based on the black and white land use chart? And then I agree that major physical changes or construction and building permits to a certain level should and could trigger some, you know, property improvements, which we have seen. I did some reading and looking at non-conforming use websites. There's consultants, there's other cities, there's other newspaper articles on this stuff. And a couple of things I ran across was a guy that's a pretty famous planning consultant down south, and he said most zoning codes treat all non-conforming uses as evils to be tolerated until the day that they can be squeezed out of existence. More nuanced treatment of non-conforming uses can be calibrated. The precise terms will depend on the situation on the ground in each community and neighborhood, which is kind of what I was kind of talking about, but that doesn't give an answer of what we're trying to get to tonight.
Well, actually, that kind of does lead into the partial or the timing, the time limits, like Paula is talking about too. It sounds like you're talking about the same thing. You're talking about saying, okay, well, you've got this issue. Well, okay, we'll give you got this long to start working on fixing that issue. You got another issue, but then it also goes back to your overall point of, is it a big waste of money if in
Yeah, and
20
and most of
20
what I
years
just
the building's
talked
gonna
about
be
happened to
worthless
be on
and-
the use side with the 90-day window. You know, obviously, if somebody leaves that property, the property's not conforming. That a new use comes that isn't even allowed in that district, but the building's perfect for it. Normally turned away. I mean, that's what our code's for. But could there be more gray area? And one other guy, Dave Aldine, is a California civil engineer. I'm going to wait for Chris to listen to this one because you're going to like it.
All right, go ahead.
This guy says, I understand why it's often comfortable to rely on black and white standards, but the world is often gray, and the interpretation of gray areas to the overall benefit of the community should be part of the job description for planning staffs. Then he said, I believe the dicta, if your planning director isn't at risk of being fired at least once a year, then he's not doing his job. But really, that happens when you start to push to the, it's it's easy to say, we got it black and white, this is it. But out on the streets, and I'm speaking this because that's what I do for a job too on the other side, it's rarely black and white. And rarely are the buildings in new, perfect, upgraded code condition, especially when you're chasing ADA, and every single property I have, we're chasing sprinkler backflows. You just go get a business license, you got to upgrade all this stuff. So what about the guy with the older property and he's not hurting anybody, assuming health, safety, moral welfare? All of that is being met. It scares me to vote to start saying, you guys are going to start paying the piper when some building department guy goes, got you. On the other hand, I'm the first one to complain that our city might be looking run down.
But it might,
So what-
it
how
might
do
be
I-
a really
how
nice
do I
building.
absorb this?
Or it might be a appropriate use, just like you said. Why the conditional use permit is really a way to do it, because you get the control without the but without taking the guy into bankruptcy. I don't think we want to do that. I think we want to do the most important. We'll look better all the time. We have a lot of non-conforming sites.
And does that then,
It fits
Chris and Paula, does that go into kind of like the three scenarios, the partial enforcement? Because my notes there, it said it seems like too much detail and too much itemized control involved for us to make, okay, if property has this little bit or that little bit, then we do this, and it has this and that, and a time frame. Is it even trackable?
Yes. Not currently, but we're supposed to get a new a replacement for our computer system in the next year, and it would be trackable then. No, all good ideas, all good discussion, Rob. And all good issues.
And I have no real answer.
No, you went a lot of different directions there. It's hard to have an answer for all of that, but we are. That's what we're looking for, solutions. If, like I said, if we don't get a direction today, maybe we come back next month and come back with a little bit more. We can do a little bit more discussion on it. We can do a little more city study if you want, or we can just let you mull it over and drive around town and look at some of the buildings that we're talking about and the sites and try and get some ideas.
That would be something that I'd be interested in doing.
Me too, because a real world scenario of look at this building. Here's what on the city staff side this thing's missing, and if we can catch them on a business license, if we can catch them on a 90-day non-conforming use window, if we can catch them on this, we're going to ask for this, that, and the other.
One of the things that I've asked staff to start doing is when the counter guys start hearing people come in and start asking questions about a location that's recently been vacated. CED on Bear Valley Road, right by the railroad tracks, you look down on them. They were one of the first examples. ask them to do a pre-submittal on it, and meaning that somebody goes out there and walks the site and says, what is this building and site lacking? What is it missing? What is it non-conforming for? And what would we be asking the new tenant to fix if they need go in there with a conditional use permit? And so we've been doing that, and that might be a good example. Maybe I can bring that, maybe we can give you that file. There's no curbing around the landscape planters. There's no trash enclosure. The striping on the pavement. The pavement's cracked. It's concrete. It's torn up. There's not enough of it. Those are the type of things that we're talking about. It's a metal building. It has no architecture. It has a roof sign on the top of the roof, so you can see it from Bear Valley. It's got a lot of things that are violations now that we wouldn't allow, and so that maybe we bring that back as a sample. We put that in your next agendas, and we can talk about that and take it a little farther.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the director a couple of questions. First of all, when you take into account someone is out of compliance, are there extenuating circumstances?
What do you mean?
Like, for instance, someone, I can't give an example, but I'm speaking in terms that compliance requires standards, correct?
Well, the circumstance may have been we changed the code. He might be an automotive repair business like Rob is referring to in an automotive service building, but we decided that we don't want automotive repair in C2 anymore. It's a waste of space. There's better areas for it. It starts to look run down after you don't want to see repaired cars in your retail areas. So we removed automotive repair from C2. That was the extenuating circumstance that made it no good.
So our approach as relates to standards are subject to change.
They can be changed as we need them, yes.
And the need to change something is for what reason? Is it because of to suit one person, or we have a higher goal regarding we're trying to, as Commissioner Porter says, there are a number of people who think that the city of Victorville is, as relates to appearance, has fallen behind to some degree. So what is the goal here? Is the goal to improve the image of the city of Victorville, that we don't have distasteful properties?
Yes, that is the goal, in addition to also the change from automotive repair was to try and make our C2 retail areas more prosperous, more sales tax generating. So there are image, there are aesthetic reasons, there are just overall zone, to make a zone better. We in 2008 with the general plan update, we went through the entire zoning district use by use, and we said what is not appropriate in different zoning districts that was in there, and we took them out and we moved them for various reasons. They might not be compatible together for use-wise, noise-wise, just compatibility type issues. I believe three or four of you were on the commission when we did that and completely revised those zone districts and uses.
Areas that used to be unincorporated that were now part of the city that had buildings pre-existing. Drive down Palmdale Road and you see those two little bars that are just kind of sitting out in the middle of nowhere by themselves. But they've been there forever.
Thank you.
Well, I like the discussion, and that's and it definitely would lead to some. The 90-day window thing, I guess, is a big one. Also being in the business days, I think, possibly finalize all the whatever permits and licensing and just agreeing on terms and build outs, or if there's any changes required. Maybe we do need to get a little.
Sounds good. That sounds good. I'll come back with a sample and a little more discussion.
And I like Paul's idea too of maybe going out and looking at some of these buildings. I mean, I'm very familiar with CED just since it's right across the street from me, but I agree. Yeah.
In the pre-application, that would satisfy the time requirement? The 90-day?
Well, I think they're more referring to the technical aspects of a business getting all of their ducks in a row, I think, in 90 days and be able to get back to the city before the 90 days lapses and that use goes away. That's what I believe they're referring to.
Yeah.
So CED would have lapsed. They've been out of that building for 6 months, I believe, or something.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, if another business would have wanted to go back in there under the same use, they would have. They're saying that there's not enough time in 90 days to even do that. So.
We'll bring that back for next.
And then one other thing to think about, the CUP versus just the business license. Anybody has to get a business license. I've seen lots of times where you don't need a CUP. You go to get a business license, the staff holds the business license, says, no, you have to do X, Y, Z before you can get your business license. I've seen that. And then the tenant then has to go fight the landlord. Goes, your property, not mine. You know.
No, that's
Either way-
typically tied to a CUP, though.
Is it?
Yeah, we usually don't.
Oh,
we usually can't.
or a building permit. It would be a building permit.
Correct.
too,
It might
to get your
need
business
some
license.
improvements for a building permit. Yeah.
So, yeah, but there are things that
Yes.
tie it to it.
No.
Okay.
Agree.
Yep. Great. Now we'll go ahead and move on to item number 7, garage and yard sales.
Again, just a discussion item. We were asked at the last meeting to come back to investigate what other cities do, and we've provided that in a table format. Some of the suggestions that we had talked about previously were going to a set schedule of yard sales, and Fontana and San Bernardino both do that. That was kind of interesting to see. And Fontana only allows 4 yard sales per year. They set the dates for those 4 events, and then San Bernardino does 12 per year, once a month, and the dates are set. So just interesting information for you. Don't need direction today unless you're ready to provide it, but we'll keep looking.
The only thing is I've only seen one instance of one that I thought just went on forever, and it was over on Yates Road. But I think that somebody must have complained because they're not doing it anymore. But I think that when you get a complaint, I think it's been working pretty good for a garage sale. I don't think that there's been a lot of problems with it. It's the least of our worries.
Okay. I said,
at only 4 a
I brought
year?
it back because it seems like one of the issues that comes up with people before council and complaints, and Tessa looks like she's got some comments on how many
Well,
phone calls she probably received.
I'm picking up a lot of code calls as a backup, and we are getting a lot of complaints. And of course, the one lady who spoke in January or December about the amounts and I think one of the biggest nuisances is the signs, as that lady pointed out. And even we explain it at the counter. We have a kind of a funky little tracking system that about every 6 months I'll yank a bunch of garage sale permits out just to see if they're pulled with the same name, because there's so many rentals that we don't check ID because the house isn't owned by them. But people will come in and start yanking garage sales for one whole street, and those are the calls that we get. They're bringing in trucks, and they're doing, multiple ones. So we were tracking it by the name of the person who pulled the permit and finding that person was pulling 8 permits, for instance, in a year, but for different addresses on the same street. So it's that kind of thing, and it's silly time-consuming for a $5 permit. So, and code, by doing, this is what I found, by doing a lot of this research with these cities where, like Lancaster, doesn't really care unless it becomes a nuisance and they get too many calls to code. Then they shut them down. There's no permit issued. There's no tracking. They don't even know who, they just know that at a certain point, if this person's having them every weekend and they get a call to code, then they'll do something about it. Our code enforcement officers, as you know, are doing so much of the proactive stuff right now It's just, by choosing a weekend or choosing, and I know Rob's wife wouldn't like that, but by choosing a weekend a month or whatever, might not be convenient for the tenant if they're moving, which we, oh gosh, it's not the weekend before I'm moving, I don't want to do it that weekend. That could be a problem, but at least it would make Code's job a lot easier if they knew that it was a garage sale weekend. Doesn't matter, they don't have to cite anybody. All they have to do is pick up signs. If it's a non-garage sale weekend, they can cite them as they run across them on a Friday or a Saturday. So.
However, you're the one taking these calls, and by the way, I'm really glad to hear that you are getting more complaint calls, because that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take neighbors to complain. We could put on paper you only get 4 times. We can hand people who happen to be the few good ones that come and get a permit, here's a flyer, don't be a bad garage sale person. Okay, that's fine, but it's all the other people that are just doing it. So as long as in our code, it's 4 times a year, no more than 3 consecutive days. $5, come and fill out a form at City Hall. I'm not sure that's going to do a whole lot. And most importantly, on the ordinance about the signs. So when Tessa's getting more phone calls now, that means neighbors are complaining, because that's the only way. We can't go police it all, but if a neighbor complains, then you know there's a garage sale problem. Now you can be reactive and go get that. If no one ever complains that there's a garage sale problem, then you got to assume there's not a garage sale problem. Now, I would if my neighbor was doing it every single day, and then at least we have it in the code. And if we had a garage sale only on the first Saturday of each month, well, what about the second, third, and fourth Saturdays where all the bad guys are going to do it anyways, and those signs are going to go out? They don't care. They don't even want to get a permit. I think it's all got to be neighborhood policed. If no one calls, there's not a problem. If someone calls, there's a problem. We have code to go.
Well, I think, like Tess and Paula were saying, was if you set them for set weekends, though, that makes it clearly obvious that on any other weekend that they're not allowed for code to pick up on that.
The neighbor still has to call to tell code.
No, not necessarily, because code
Oh, if
officers
there's-
do work on it. We do have set officers whose shift work does include a Friday, Saturday shift. So those are the 2 most popular days for garage sales anyway. Very, very few want them on a Sunday. We do less permits for Sunday. We add it to the permit sometimes just because they can get 3, but they always generally come in, and it's only this Friday, Saturday, because of Sunday being their day.
Is this something that also be maybe used in conjunction with, something in the newspaper or throwing an ad on Y1?
That's what
Public information type thing?
we're working on an application where people sign up for their yard sale, and we put it on the website and through our GIS program, and somebody's eventually able to click on yard sales, and they can see every yard sale that we have a permit for on the weekend or whatever, and they'll know where they're at, and they'll know that they're legal or whatever too. Then that might cut down on the need for people to use signage if there's other ways for them, to see that there's there are yard sales out there. So.
But I guess more so on if we did make any change, or how do we inform the public of the changes and what they have available to them?
Gotcha. Oh, I see what you're
But they
saying.
could go out with the utility bills.
That's what we did.
Oh, exactly.
We did that
Okay.
one time already with the utility bills and our website, where we made a notice to remind everybody who gets a water bill in the city of Victorville that don't forget, you got to get a yard sale if you want to have a garage sale.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, because I would want, anything that we would do, I definitely would want to, inform the
Sure.
public on, just so they're aware of it. And,
We need to do a new home packet again. I know. I think we had that many years ago and haven't had one since. But for new home buyers, that tract developers have a handout for them going over some of the regulations in the
Hey,
city.
tract developers?
Yeah.
How many have you handed out?
No, I mean we need to do that. That's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
okay.
Before the boom comes.
I think if the biggest problem is the garage sale signs that go up on all the poles and the corners, and then on Monday morning it's all left junk. I think that's the biggest problem, because once again, the guy that has the garage sale every single weekend, the neighbor's going to call or the neighbor's not going to call.
Are you hearing more of consecutive garage sales or signage issues?
For code, for the calls I get for code are consecutive garage sales. The people will come in, they'll get their permit 4 times a year, but they're having them multiple times. So they're getting a permit, but then they're not getting a permit. They're getting a permit, they're not. And the other largest concern is that they're trucking in new things to sell,
Right, which is, that's...
Right.
No,
making it a business, and a garage sale's not supposed to be a business, so.
agreed. All right. Well, I would like to do presentation reports by the commission members. An opportunity is provided for planning commissioners to present items of interest at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I made a note to myself regarding some of the things in which I witnessed that were achieved tonight. I saw that the commission created an environment for mediation between two parties regarding their particular issue. I witnessed the fact that there were a number of solutions that were rendered and a number of decisions on behalf of the citizens for the city of Victorville that were in their favor. And I think this was an opportunity, once again, to make great gains on behalf of the city of Victorville.
Yes, Commissioner Wilson, you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Go a little bit longer than.
I had a goal to have the longest my tenure so far.
Okay.
Commissioner Kirk?
Yeah, you're doing an okay job. That's it.
That's it. I have nothing to close this meeting until our, what do we got, April 8th, I believe. 5 p.m. Thank you all. I appreciate that, yes. All right. Got it, and I got yellow folders and pins and all kinds of goodies and forms and compliance and